All right. So welcome back, everybody. It has been an interesting few weeks, to say the least. So we have a few announcements kind of on topic of the break. So actually, we're going to have the United Way join us after the meeting, and they're going to discuss some things about VITA and how that's going to work this year with everything virtual. So if you are interested in volunteering with VITA or planning on volunteering with VITA, tonight would be a good time to stick around if you can to hear what they have to say and to get some updates on that front. Kind of a little friendly reminder, the officer positions, the officer positions are still available for this coming school year. So that would be from fall 2021 to spring 2022. Those are still available. We have a professional development officer position open, reporter, community service. So there's still several officer opportunities, if I can talk, available. If any of you are interested, please email me and we can have a chat and I can mark you down on our list as interested. For some scheduling changes, March 18th if you look on your schedules that we emailed out previously, that was a to be decided date for a speaker. We hadn't had one confirmed. However, we ended up moving the Hess Stewart Campbell meeting that we missed due to all this crazy weather to that March 18th date. So Hess Stewart and Campbell will now be speaking to us on March 18th. For those of you who've signed up for VITA or had VITA training and whatnot, we asked for your t-shirt size. This is because we're working on getting VITA t-shirts out to everyone. So those should be, again, with the weather, this has also been delayed, but those should be ordered soon. So if you don't have your t-shirt size in, this is the last minute to get it on our list for that t-shirt order. Also, we have coming up, we have for the national BAP organizations, they have different regional meetings. We're also sending people, sending being the funny word this year, virtually to these regional meetings. There are two dates, March 5th and March 19th. So if you're interested in attending these virtual regional meetings, reach out to me and I can forward you on information, tell you a little bit about what they were before. I attended them in person. Not sure how different they're going to be, but I can tell you about like my experience and what they typically are like. And that's just about all the announcements that I have. Does anyone have any questions before we get started? Nope. Okay. Well, in that case, on to the fun part. We have Anna Neal here with us today. She's from Huntington Federal Bank, and she's going to be talking with us today in kind of a more informal setting, so she's not going to have slides. We'll be watching the chat, so if you have any questions and your mic isn't working or you feel more comfortable typing the question, by all means, place it in the chat, and we will get that question to her. So without further ado, Anna, take it away.
All right. Okay, so as she said, my name is Anna Neal, and I am actually the assistant controller at Huntington Federal Savings Bank. Small humble brag, I did just get a promotion to assistant vice president, so I'm pretty pumped about that. So I have been here since August of 2016, so going on, 4.5, 5 years now. I am a Marshall graduate. I graduated in 2011. And I have degrees in accounting and finance. I started my career in public accounting, as many accountants do. And I worked in audit for a very small firm here in Huntington for about 4 years, I think. And then I worked for the city of Huntington for a year as a revenue audit supervisor. And then I ended up here. So I don't want to, completely bore everyone by just listing off all of my tasks that I do on a daily basis, but I would like to just kind of give you an overview of what maybe my typical day looks like. So I kind of like through the last few weeks have been just jotting down some things that I might do on a daily, monthly, quarterly basis. So basically, we're a very small bank, and here in our bookkeeping department, we have 7 people. I am actually sitting in one of the offices, not my office. And there are 3 separate offices, which I was actually going to walk you around and just show you where everything happens here. It's not exceptionally exciting or anything, but my boss is in his office with the auditor right now because it's audit time. So I'll have to see if I can sneak back in there and show you around there. So anyway, on a daily basis, we are going through and basically reconciling and checking all of the activity for the bank that happens in a day. Everything from what the tellers do on the line, which is, basic taking mortgage payments or checking deposits or checking withdrawals, stuff like that, to loan closings and CD activity. We basically are so small that we're able to and pretty much do go through everything almost daily. On a daily basis, someone in my office will proof the mortgage. So we're basically checking to see that everything that happens that a teller does matches to our online processing, which also then matches to our general ledger. Our general ledger and our online processing don't actually directly talk to one another. So we have to input all that information into the general ledger via an import from an Excel document that is created every night, and then reconcile that back to what's online. So mortgages are a big part of our business here, like a huge part of it. So that's something that we try to stay on top of and make sure everything's reconciled. And I guess that it's just something that, it's easier to do every day than to wait until something gets out of hand and then try to go back for the whole month and figure out what happened. And something that was interesting to me when I came here, I think I was used to being an auditor or being like in the city government. I didn't work with the actual financials and financial statements and the daily business and stuff, but here we actually do a general ledger and print out like a statement of condition, operating statement every single day. So I feel like a lot of places probably do something like that on a monthly basis and really look hard at it, but we are doing that every single day for a number of different purposes. But I mean, you just kind of have to keep everything in line when you're talking about everybody's money. And it's probably a totally normal thing that every bank does. And to me, it was just odd. I was like, really? We are doing this every day, but that's what we do. 2 times a month we pay bills. For instance, today I did the accounts payable. So we are responsible for inputting invoices that get paid here by check, unless it's something that's like an automatic withdrawal, and we handle that too. But today I paid stuff via paper checks. So we input all that and run those a couple times a month. At the end of the month, we do our accruals and our month-end closing, just like, tons of other businesses do. And we have some things that over the course of the years that I've been here have become automated, so that the online system is processing those for us as it should be. But there were actually a lot of things here that were set up on more of a manual way of doing things because of just that's the way that one of the old treasurers like to do it. So we were definitely trying to get more towards becoming automated and making sure that, the computer is doing its job and doing that stuff for us. On a daily basis, we may approve and create wires here. So we are sending money for our customers to other banks, or we are sending money to the attorneys for loan closings, stuff like that. All that kind of stuff usually passes through some of the people downstairs, and then bookkeeping. There are only certain people within the bank that are able to create and release our wires. Let's see. On a quarterly basis, banks have to do what is called a call report, which is something that, and I think that FFIEC is who puts forth the call report. I always get the letters mixed up. But a quarterly, we have to do the call report, which is basically, it kind of feels like a big tax return but it's just informational for banks. So it provides the Federal Reserve information about our mortgages and how many of them are on non-accrual status, and so we don't expect to be able to collect all the money from them. Information on our savings deposits, our checking accounts. It's a pretty big report. I mean, there are probably a whole lot of things that we don't have to do because we're such a small bank, but it is definitely something that's time consuming. And so between two people working on it, we can probably knock it out in about a week, but that's something that we have to deal with every quarter. We recently started doing our financial statements in-house. So that is something that we just started doing last year. And that is what's going on right now. So we actually, prepare our financial statements and notes that are provided to the auditor to do our audit. And then they're presented at the annual meeting, which happens to be on March 9th. So after I accepted this speaking opportunity, I kind of looked at the calendar and I thought, girl, what are you thinking? Because you might be really busy. Luckily, everything came together pretty well this year and it hasn't been an issue. And that's another thing that has been really strange about this year with COVID is there have been a lot of people that have been out, and that includes me. I had it in December and I missed almost 4 entire weeks of work at year end. So any questions about that, feel free to ask those as well. It was not a pleasant experience, but yeah, I mean, everyone is really busy because like right now we have one person missing from just our department, and it puts, work on other people and everyone has to be gone for at least 2 weeks when you get sick. So that's been an interesting challenge. So anyway, we do our financial statements. That is something that came together this year a lot more quickly than it did last year because we kind of had a steeper learning curve to overcome last year, it being the first time that we did it. But I actually really enjoy doing those kind of things, and I've just enjoyed the process. I like putting together the balance sheet and the operating statement and getting together all the notes. I don't love reading all of the accounting standard updates that we have to go through because those are things that we sometimes have to disclose in our notes. And it's definitely a challenge for me to focus on those kind of things, but I do enjoy a challenge. So on a monthly basis as well, we have subsidiary ledgers that we will, make sure everything matches to our general ledger. We keep track of all of the securities that are purchased and sold, and CDs, all the investments. I mean, we aren't the ones that purchase them, but everything has to come through bookkeeping. It's like there's a trickle up effect, whether you're working in teller or new accounts or loans, everything ends up in bookkeeping. And so usually if we're calling you, it's because there is some kind of problem. And so we get a whole lot of like, oh my gosh, what's wrong now? Whenever we pick up the phone and call. And it's not always bad, but we do, end up having questions that people, we're like, okay, this isn't resolved. This needs reconciled. What can we do to figure this out? So we are basically just kind of like the gatekeepers up here. We just got to keep all the numbers in line, and we go through almost everything. So people who think they might sneak through with not doing their job one day are eventually going to get caught. Are there any questions so far? All right. Well,
I do have a question. You touched on it briefly. You said you started in public accounting.
Sure did.
Is that like pretty common to go from public accounting to a banking position?
I
Do you think you could have done that without like the other step of working for the city?
Oh, I mean, I could have gone to banking straight from public accounting. I mean, I may have been able to get here straight from college if a position would have been open, but I always tell people that public accounting is a really good place to start because you get exposed to a lot of different people and clients. And I had done work as a public accountant for both the city of Huntington and this bank. So I got both of those jobs basically because they knew who I was and they knew that I'm capable of doing the work. So it was and like the bank wanted a CPA, they wanted me to keep my credentials up to date and all that kind of stuff. So definitely I needed to have that and the experience beforehand. But I mean, had I not done work here, then who knows if I would have ended up here. I think it is very common for that to happen, for people to end up going to work for people who used to be their clients in public accounting.
I guess since we're on the topic, I wanted to ask you too, since you have experience in both, do you like prefer your work schedule now? Is there like a lot more pros when it comes to work-life balance?
100%. Yes, I mean, there's absolutely no question. I didn't have one of the jobs in public accounting where they require a certain number of hours during, tax or audit season, but during those times of year, and like I said, I was in audit, so I didn't have any tax work, but the hours were a lot longer, and I was studying for the CPA exam for the first year that I made it. And it's just, here is a lot more of a regular schedule too. I mean, I work from 8:30 to 3:15, and I don't often have to stay too late, but I mean, like we've been working on the financial statements. So I mean, there are days that I've been here until 4 or 4:30, and I mean, that's like a typical work day for most people. So I mean, in public accounting, I don't see that I would have ever been getting out of the office before 4:30 or 5. Now, I mean, some public accounting firms are very flexible with your work schedule. They might allow you to work from home. Working from home for a place like this bank is not something that is easy to do, because when we had the shutdowns last spring, we worked alternating shifts here, and there's just so much of this bank that is still physically like on paper that it was not feasible to continue doing for too long. And as far as, working from home full time, that would just basically be impossible. So, I mean, there are probably a lot of benefits to working in public accounting like that, where you have a flexible schedule, whereas I don't. I mean, I'm pretty much here 8:30 to 3:15 every day. But I mean, my employer is flexible if I have an appointment or if I need to do something. So, but as far as regular work hours, I definitely much prefer this. Another thing I wanted to touch on as far as just being a CPA is the leadership opportunities that can sometimes come to you. And I always preach to everybody to be involved, and whether that's being involved with Beta Alpha Psi or, once you get out into the professional world, joining the State Society of CPAs, or you could be a student member now. I always encourage students to join the WVS CPA as a student member, because you get opportunities to just do things that maybe you wouldn't have been as comfortable with. And I mean, just by being in Beta Alpha Psi, you guys are doing a great thing there. So whenever I was in public accounting, I got the opportunity to serve on the Huntington chapter of the State Society of CPAs. So I did that, and they eventually just move you through the ranks until you get to president, and then you cycle off the board. But doing those kind of things helped me get more comfortable being around, other people in public accounting or other accounting, and meeting people, and, just doing things that I wouldn't have done before. And then eventually, you may end up being here speaking for Beta Alpha Psi or whatever else. So I've really enjoyed doing stuff like that. And honestly, I love accounting and I love my job, but I find doing Beta Alpha Psi and other stuff is just the part that I like the best. It's the most rewarding part for me, is to be able to try and help, you guys as students, or I serve on several boards. I like being able to do stuff like that. So just getting out there and being able to meet people in your community is super important, and will lead you to a lot of places that you may not have thought that you would end up. So I actually did a panel a few months ago, and we had a ton of questions that were submitted for this. This is for the Young CPA Committee, which is a committee of the State Society of CPA, which I'm on. So that's another thing that you can join, I believe, as students, and become engaged in that. So I just thought if, nobody else had any questions, although there is this question. Hold on, let me go read this one that he sent to me earlier. Okay, do banks accept accountants with public accounting experience? Do banks prefer accountants who started within the industry? And what specifically drew you toward banking? Well, as I mentioned, I just kind of ended up here because one of the ladies that works here pretty much called me up out of the blue and said that they were wanting to get an assistant to the treasurer because they were working on succession plans. And so when he retires, I would end up taking his place. So it was kind of just a fluke, but I do love it. I've just kind of tried to roll with the punches and take what comes to me. I guess that sounds terrible, kind of. It sounds like I didn't have any drive, like I didn't really know where I wanted to be. And in a way I didn't, because I wasn't super involved in stuff in college, and I did Beta Alpha Psi maybe my last year and didn't really know where I wanted to end up. My first job I got kind of also on a fluke. I mean, I ended up applying for it and getting it and learning a lot. And everything else has just kind of happened from there. It wasn't like I, completely went for it. And as for whether, the bank here, I don't know how other banks work. I mean, we only actually have 2 CPAs in this entire organization. And that's myself and another gentleman who is, he's like a loan analyst. So like my boss is not a CPA. He doesn't have an accounting degree. I think his degree is in like management. And he was someone who worked here for many years and ended up in bookkeeping, and then ended up, rising to that position. So actually this bank in particular, we hire from within a lot. So, a lot of the people that are on the teller line now may in 3, 4, 5 years be up here learning how to be a loan officer. So that's just kind of how this bank functions. And they brought me in from outside because they were wanting somebody who did have more experience, and preferably someone who did have a CPA license. So that's how that happened. Did you have a question?
I have one more. Is there anything that you miss about public accounting, or are you just happy to be out of there?
I don't really miss it personally. I miss the challenges of it a little bit sometimes, because there are some days here that it's a little bit like feast or famine. It's like some days we have a ton of stuff to do and some days are just kind of dragging. And I'm not really sure why that is, but there are parts of public accounting, the work being more challenging, I think, that I miss. But overall, I would not go back. This is fine with me. So. All right, well, I'm just going to go through some of these questions that I actually had from this prior panel that I did, because I thought some of them were pretty good. So is it reasonable to think that after COVID, accounting firms will still have people work remotely? And how has your day-to-day changed from the pandemic? Well, I touched on that a little bit earlier in regards to, when people are out for illness or maybe quarantined or whatever, it means that everyone else here has to pick up the slack. And so there are some day-to-day changes just with the amount of work that people are doing and who's doing what work, because somebody might not be here. I think for us, we've been back in the office with everybody here, I think since last June. So we really didn't stay out of the office for too long. And then at some point, we ended up having to wear masks if we're away from our desk. And then it turned into everyone has to wear a mask all the time unless you're in your own office with your door shut. So we're just, following the guidelines that are given to us here. But as far as other places, I think definitely accounting firms and other businesses will start to move towards at least a blended model of working for people who want to do it. Maybe you work at home 3 days a week and you come to the office for 2. I have a friend, my best friend works for Intuit, and she had told me that they've been working from home for a long time. And she told me they are never going back to 5 days in the office, that it'll always be some type of a blended thing. So I think that you'll see that a lot more. And I think that's probably a little bit harder for people who are just hitting the workforce. And, maybe you guys have not had a job, or, once you get your first job, it's going to be a little bit weird to just go in 3 days a week, it'll be harder to get to know people, but I think it'll just be an adjustment that eventually people get used to, or who knows? I mean, maybe I'm completely wrong and we'll just go back to complete normalcy once we can, but I would be surprised if they did that. As far as CPA exam stuff, I would highly recommend everyone, if you're going to go into the field of accounting and seriously, that's what your career is going to be, then you should definitely take the CPA exam and try to get your CPA license, because it sets you apart from everybody. So I get a lot of questions about, how would I prepare differently if I had to go back and do it, or what was your study routine? So I studied every day after work for probably 2 hours or more, and Saturday, like almost all day, and Sunday almost all day. And I allowed myself to take off on Fridays and just have that evening to do whatever. For me, I actually went to live courses for the Becker review, and I felt like that was the only way I was going to actually sit down and review the materials. I don't think they offer those anymore, and I don't really know. I'm not familiar with the ways that Becker or any of the other review programs are offered anymore, but I would definitely suggest using one of them, because you're going to need some kind of help preparing for that exam. I mean, it's a beast. And I know that they're working on making a lot of changes to it, but I don't think it's going to necessarily make it any easier. How did I handle work-life balance while studying for CPA exam? I jotted down, no life, it's hard. And it is. It's not that you have no life, but I mean, you just kind of have to accept that for a number of months, like, this has to be your priority. Like, if you're serious about it and you want to pass it, you have to study. And for some people, it's going to be easier than others, obviously. I mean, maybe for me, studying 2 hours every night and almost all day on the weekends, that wouldn't be enough for some people. And maybe for some people, it's way too much. But it is very hard and it's very time consuming, but it is 100% worth it, because it just makes you're like the step above somebody who doesn't have it. So going into your professional career, what is one thing that you wish you would have been aware of? And were you ever nervous or had doubts after graduating? I wish that someone would have put into explicit terms for me that you really don't know a whole lot. You know what you studied in college, and you may have gotten good grades and you understand the material, but it just feels like when you go into work and you're just starting your career, you're just not gonna know that much. You think that you're super prepared, but I think that, and it depends on what firm you go to or what type of business you work for. I mean, even within different accounting firms, the procedures are different. You have to learn what that firm does and what their culture is like. I think you just have to, or need to, try and accept the fact that you're going in and you can prepare all you want, but there's going to be a lot of stuff that you don't know. And that's totally fine. And was I nervous? And did I have doubts about myself? Yes, I'm sure I did. Because it is overwhelming and it's a lot for some people to handle. So I think that you just have to do your very best, because I don't think that anyone expects you to know as much as maybe you expect yourself to know. When you go to your first job, you're going to be trained and you're going to learn what you need to know. And I think you just have to be accepting of that and let it come as it comes. What are some supplemental areas of expertise or knowledge that accounting companies would highly value their employees learning? For example, data analytics, finance, coding, etc. So I thought that was an interesting question. And I personally wish that I had a little bit more experience with using Excel and data analytics, because I think that data is a really, it's becoming a big thing to be informal about it. A lot of people work with a lot of data, and you need to be able to know how to throw that stuff into an Excel spreadsheet or whatever program you're using, and be able to, sift through that, filter, pivot table, all that kind of stuff to be able to use that data for what you need it for. So I wish that I would have had a little bit more experience with that. And I have taken classes and self-taught some things, but it was something that I definitely had to learn. Would you be where you are today without your CPA license? I would say no, I would not. And I think that's pretty obvious to me, just because I know when I received the call from the lady at this bank, they were wanting someone with a CPA license. So if I didn't have that, even if I was just as good at what I can do, I don't think that they would have hired me. I think they would have gone for somebody else. And what was the most difficult part about becoming a CPA, and what has been the most rewarding? So the most difficult part was just, making yourself sit down and study. And I think I mentioned I was working full time when I first started studying for the exam. It was like October, and it was the beginning of our audit season. So it meant, working from 8 till maybe 7 or 8 p.m. and then eating dinner and studying in your hotel room by yourself if you're traveling. And it was hard for me because I really like to sleep. So I had trouble sometimes coming home and focusing for another, hour or two after you've been at work all day. And all you really want to do is just like sit down in front of the TV and veg out and watch whatever. I'm a bit of a TV junkie, so I spend way too much time in front of the TV. So that's just how I decompress, I guess. That's like what I like to do to relax. But the most rewarding part for me has just been knowing that I have a lot of opportunities in this field. If I ever were to want to leave this banking profession, which I don't really see myself doing, but a lot could happen. But knowing that I have a lot of opportunities, and then being able to take advantage of some of the leadership opportunities, I feel like that has been something that's been really important to me. And I really enjoy doing it. Like I said, I think I get a lot of the reward out of my career by doing, stuff like this. I really love this question. How do you make friends once you leave college and move to a new place? And what advice would you give for us for the transition phase between college and workplace? So I didn't even move to another place. I went to school at Marshall and I stayed in Huntington. I'm actually originally from Charleston, so I'm not too far from hometown, but I don't keep in touch with anyone from high school. I don't really have that many friends from college, and some of the ones that I did have moved away. So I have had the same boyfriend and now fiance for 100 years, so he's been a constant throughout all this. But after college and getting into the workplace, it was kind of weird for a while, because I'm like, dang, I don't really have very many friends. So eventually, like, the one friend I did have here, she took me to a gym and I joined a gym, and that is honestly where probably 90% of my friends are from now, is my gym friends. But also, if you're not interested in doing that, there are plenty of professional events that you can take advantage of going to. And like I said, getting involved in the state society, the Huntington chapter, or whatever chapter, wherever you are, and going to do stuff like that, because then you're meeting people who you may have a lot in common with and can be friends outside of just the accounting stuff. There's a couple people that I've met through those avenues that I'm not super good friends with them outside of accounting, but I definitely turn to them if I need something that's work related or community related, or I have a question. And I value that a lot, because I think that what I do without these people, I would be just fumbling around trying to Google everything. And sometimes I'm just don't find the answers I want there. So it's really nice to be able to have people, both professionally and personal contacts, that you can go to for advice and, just have as friends. So what advice do you have for an individual that's having difficulty deciding between tax and insurance professional routes? Is it more advantageous to pick one over the other? I don't think it's more advantageous to pick one over the other, but a lot of people have a very specific fit. I can't really say that I've met that many people that have done both and loved both. A lot of times somebody will go into tax and they hate it, and so they end up in audit and they like that a lot better. And there are, other avenues like advisory services and public accounting, and probably some other additional things. But it's really a personal choice, and you kind of may end up just being placed somewhere at first. And if that's not a good fit for you, then you're going to have to, figure out maybe if there's another place in the firm for you to go, to do something different, or eventually just go to a different firm or a different job. And I think that there's no shame in that. I mean, if something's not the right fit for you, it's just not the right fit. And that does include the firm. I mean, some people go somewhere and they fit in perfectly and they love it, and another person might just feel like that's not the place for them. So you always got to take care of yourself and put yourself, first in some ways, and make sure that you're happy and that you're somewhere that is a good place for you, because you're not going to be your best self if you're at a job or a firm or a position that you just don't like. So those are the questions that I had that I wanted to go through, and I don't really have a whole lot else to talk about. So if anybody else has any questions, or, personal, professional, I'm an open book.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So you mentioned certain things, that you would go back and change. But so what are some of the challenges that you face, like some of the biggest challenges of being an assistant controller?
I think one of the biggest challenges here is not even really accounting related, as it is so much, well, this is the way we've always done it. It's like getting things to change. And I am just a big believer in the fact that things don't work forever. Whether it's laws or rules or procedures, I think that you have to change with the times. Like, just because this worked 30 years ago doesn't mean that it's okay for now. We need to update, we need to move forward, we need to change things to where they work. And a lot of people are afraid of change. And I think that for the most part, it has been well received here if I tried to do something, but it is something that I think is part of the reason why I was brought here. But I think that getting people to change has been a big challenge here. Oh, I think there's something in the chat here. Let's see. What is one piece of advice that was given to you that has stuck with you throughout your career? Oh, geez. Well, this wasn't something that was given to me particularly early, but it's kind of, I've kind of already said it, which is the take care of yourself. My old coworker and I, when I worked at the city, I actually had like an assistant basically who helped me with the revenue audit stuff. And he and I were about the same age, and we had a lot in common. Everything, I went through the process of hiring him, and it worked out better than I could have ever imagined. I am like, will I ever get that lucky ever again if I, have to hire somebody to work with? But he and I used to always say, take care of number one, and that is you. And it's like, I'm not saying you always put yourself first or you're selfish, but I think that you have to make sure that you are taken care of, because you can't take care of everybody else until you take care of yourself. Anybody else? Well, if nobody has anything else to ask, then I guess we can end it there. I can walk you around here. We'll walk you around the offices so you can see everything. I've got my laptop, so let's see if we can. So this is one of our bookkeeping offices. We over here we have the girls who do some CD work and bank reconciliations. And yes, I would like to show you that we have a typewriter in the corner. There are some things here that are just ancient and are still here and still get used sometimes. So this is one of our other offices, and we've got filing cabinets at the back and two ladies working here. And then 2 ladies work in the other room where I was originally. And then my boss and I and another lady have an office down the hall. So he was in there talking to the auditor though. So I'm going to slip back in here so that I don't interrupt them. And they still have Merry Christmas on the back of their door here. So clearly they have not taken down their decorations. So that's our couple of offices. Like I said, there's only about 7 of us that work here in bookkeeping. So we kind of keep everything rolling.
Well, thanks for the tour. That is kind of cool. I work for Stilla, West Virginia, so I understand that resistant to change, and we still use a typewriter for 1099.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, the accounts payable girl's the one that does them, and she loves year end, so she gets to use it.
I mean, I do have to use them occasionally. Like we have these little mortgage books that we have one set of loans that is out of area. Huntington Federal only does loans locally, but we purchased a set of out of area loans a number of years ago, and they get processed once a month when the mortgage servicer sends us money. And we keep track of all of those on the computer, but also it prints it out in these little mortgage books that we have. And we have to type in them like when the interest is paid to. And so I have to use a typewriter like once a month or occasionally for some other random reason. And I always joke with them that they're trying to kill me, because when I have to sit down at that thing, it's so foreign to me that I mean, my heart starts beating fast. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. It like stresses me out to have to use it, which is probably, I mean, it's funny. And also it just like annoys the heck out of me that they're still here, but I guess they get used sometimes. So like, it's like when an older person, I guess, has to sit down at an actual computer and use it. It's a little bit frightening, but that's how a typewriter is to me.
Yeah, it definitely goes both ways. Well, does anyone have any other questions for Anna? Any questions for me or Amanda Thompson-Abbott? Nope. Well, thank you so much for joining us this evening, Anna, and I heavily enjoyed, oh, sorry. I heavily enjoyed your kind of more informal discussion, and especially your office tour.
Thank
I enjoyed that as well.
you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, have a good evening.
Thank you. You too.